Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of Important Work. I'm your host, Chris Angel, and I'm here with my guest today, Neelam Tewar. Hello, Neelam.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Awesome.
All the way from, you're in India today.
I am in India today. That's a nice way of putting it. My friends always say, like, where in the world is Neelam? So
Right. Yes. And it's nighttime where I am. It's morning where you are the next day. That always fascinates me. So I love that. But I'm excited to talk to you because you have such cool stuff that you do. I feel like you do a lot of things, and I'm excited to sort of explore some of those. But for everybody listening, just give me a sense of, like, who are you? Like, what do you do? What is your specialty? What is your work?
Ooh, I think I have a lot of work to do in the world. So I'm known to help my clients step from, build wherever they've built their social equity. I help them go a little further so that they're seen as experts and also influencers and thought leaders, because I feel that a lot of people in this industry, we will talk about it from like maybe a coaching consulting perspective or even authorship perspective, are very in their own little world. And it's time to step beyond that, because the world really needs people who have the knowledge and the skill sets to help others. And so I help my clients around the world get to that place, whether they're first-time entrepreneurs or they're established and starting something new. My biggest thing is that I work with people who have some sort of mission at heart that they want to contribute to society or the planet, whatever that one thing is.
I love that.
And I'm also a speaker, and I'm invited to international stages around the world to give my thoughts on various topics.
I was going to ask, like, what do you speak on when you speak? What are some of the topics? Just some of them.
Sure. So if it's a TEDx type of setup, that comes with a theme, and you have to figure out a way. Of course, they invite you to step on that stage, but that varies. And I will talk about primarily how to live a more connected life in those settings. But I do talk about conscious leadership and evolved entrepreneurship, and why it's so important for creators right now to not get caught up in the hustle and grind, so to speak, of popular trend.
It's beautiful. I love it. You said that reminds me, because you said this earlier before we hit record, that you said the saying was, people are not a funnel strategy. Explain that, because I feel like that sort of gets to what you just were saying. What does that mean?
So I've, I get to meet all kinds of people around in my travels or in conversations. And I'll have somebody just say, like, I haven't done my sales page, or I'm just setting up my funnel. And I'm thinking, like, sweetheart, the people you're helping are not funnels. They will be drawn to you even if you have a bare bones structure. For example, the program I just told you about, the class that I'm just starting to work on, I don't have a sales page for it. I know what the flow of the class is. I know the results they're going to get from a monetary perspective and visibility perspective. But it's not my thing to, like, build such convoluted systems. I find them convoluted perhaps because I'm a writer and poet at heart. So I want things to be, like, simple and accessible, right? And people come with, like, deep, pain, and they're resonating with something you've said, whether it's online or on stage. Putting them through a system I feel like is not doing them justice. And really the currency here should be building relationships and intimacy with each and every individual who's coming to you, whether they buy from you or not. That's not as important. But in the long run, when it comes to people looking at you a certain way, at least there's no dissonance that X person shifted their their behavior when I spoke with them. You have to have that consistency. I'm not saying you can't have bad days, but you can be very genuine about the fact that, hey, it's like super late at night. Please bear with me if I ask you a question again or something like that. Be human. Right. So people are not a funnel strategy. I think a lot of marketing experts or people who have been in the space now are also realizing that it's important to keep things simple. You should seem accessible and be as accessible as you can within the time allotted to you. I know I can't get back to every message that comes to me, right?
Absolutely,
But I create the time. Every week I create at least like an hour where I go through my Insta, my LinkedIn, and make sure that I'm responding to people who are interacting with me. And sometimes it takes me weeks to get back. And it's not just online.
Yeah.
It's even with my own family, which
That's
they've come to terms with. They've come to terms with. And they know
awesome.
what to say. They know what to say in the family WhatsApp group to get
Yeah.
my attention.
Nice, nice. I feel like what you're pointing to is what I've noticed with people who are making that crossover from they haven't quite found their important work, but they've reached success in the way they've been doing it. And then they cross over into the thing that they really want to say, the missional thing that's in their soul to say to the world. They bring sometimes they can bring old patterns with them from marketing, right? Like funnel strategies. And I think one of the things I've discovered or I'm learning about important work is there's a lot of grace and a lot of flexibility with people when you have something missional attached to what you're doing in the world, right? Like it doesn't have to be perfect when people get that you have a heart or a purpose.
Yes, and it's an iterative process. We're humans, we're evolving, we're learning, we're trying to see what works for us, what doesn't. And most people are stepping into a stage of self-awareness, especially when they're doing the crossover, which basically means that they're having to now look back at everything else they did and try to make it, this doesn't sound right, but it's like almost fit with the new place they're going to. And the important thing with mission work is that, you know, your heart's work or your soul's calling, however you choose to dissect that, is that it's not it's not a deadline, right?
Right.
It is something you can build and mold over a period of time, and you go gradually. But I think the impatience of just having that instant gratification becomes the deciding factor, because then it's easy to fall back into the thing you were doing because you're just like, I don't see the results here right now.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that's the other piece of it is then when you cross over into important work, there becomes this human divine cooperative where in the past you didn't necessarily bring the divine into it, where it is now an important work. If it's coming from your soul, you can't force it. You can't manipulate it. There's this piece to it that you just can't control because it's coming from the divine. And
you shouldn't want to, right? Because you have the practical knowledge. You know, I'm a two-brain thinker. So everything I do, I'm like, there has to be soul and there has to be strategy. It can't be beautiful. One or the other. Yeah. Right. Love that. And I think most people get stuck, especially with so much spiritual conversation happening on the interwebs. You know, people teaching you just let go and surrender. And I always want to, I get concerned with that because you're really creating apathy sometimes. And if you're not teaching people what that process actually means, you're creating non-action, right?
Yeah, I've experienced that. Yeah.
Right. So you're just sitting there with that feeling and you're not attacking it head on. You're not trying to really understand what that feeling or that dissonance is communicating to you. So you can't go with just one thought process into the space. You have to have both. And divinity especially, right? It's not in anyone's control. Yes, we're divine beings. We're all coming to an understanding of that, especially people who are on the path. But even within that, there's a way of looking at divinity in a very practical sense, because once you step into that space, whatever you call it, you have to sit down and probably find a way to integrate it within you and say like, okay, like, where is this taking me? What is that next action? What is that next step I need to take? What is it that I need to step into with boldness and grace and power and equanimity? Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, like, what is the strategy? Is that it? Is it to be mindful of what the next step is and then to just take the step that's revealed? Or is there some other strategy, like a funnel, or not, to implement
the spiritual funnel?
The spiritual funnel. I love it.
The spiritual funnel. Well, so if you were to break it down into a process, right? I always think that meditation is supposed to be an active state of consciousness and awareness. You know, we're always taught in meditation, don't judge, watch what's happening. I don't disagree with that. I think you should watch what's happening, but there is a way to step out of that and activate within you what that meditation and that moment or those weeks gave you. Right? Because the point of that conversation is for you to understand yourself better, B, hopefully get into deeper work with yourself, and C, take that and translate to whatever it is you think is your important work or your mission work in the world. Like, how does that moment contribute to the larger picture? And where most people tumble and stumble is they're not able to draw the connection between what they're experiencing and the larger, you know, task at hand.
Right. Why?
Because they can't quantify it. They can't quantify it.
Mm.
And so if you were filling a program, for example, right, let's talk about it in the context of what we just were. If you're filling a program that you're launching, I want 12 people in this program. That's tangible.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But you go into a meditative process, you step out of it, and you have this like deep clearing that you went through. And now you have to sit and contextualize that in the larger scheme of things. It's daunting as hell. Because you should be able to say, I want to reach 1 million people. I want to help 1 million people in my lifetime. I want to do whatever that is. Most people are scared of those numbers when it comes to the larger picture. It's easy to stand and say like, hey, I want my message to be received. I want people to hear it. But do you understand how many times you have to do that in different forums for it to actually sit?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When you run into people who are on the path, they're actively in the conversation of their important work. Although I wouldn't say that they're a top 1%er, right? Like they figured it out. They've got the balance of soul and strategy, right? They are stepping. It's a newer conversation for them. Where do you find that these people are stuck? Are they stuck in old patterns? Are they stuck in like just letting go and letting God and just not doing anything? Like where are these people that you?
I think they're giving the feelings too much importance.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're being taught in the Western side of the world, right? I live in that space too. Even though I have like Eastern sensibilities because of my heritage.
Sure.
And it's been an interesting balance for me as well, because, I identify with different things very differently, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I think what happens to people is that we're being taught right now, you look at the Brené Browns of the world coming out and saying, got to be vulnerable, got to be softer and whatnot, which I don't disagree with. However, there has to be a guidance on what that means for each and every individual. You can't just take that boilerplate and make yourself soft. There is an aspect of stoicism that goes with softness as well. If you really want to go do the big work, if you don't, that's perfectly fine. I would just say, give yourself a time frame, don't kid yourself. Because when it comes to taking action, I've seen people falter. I've had people say, I want to be on stage. I want to da-da-da. All right, here's what it will take to get you there. I don't know if this is the right time. I have already done this. I've invested. This is all the old stuff coming in because they can't see themselves in that light, even though visually they can imagine themselves there. But the longevity of what that means to be on stage or to be sending these messages out into the world, working with bigger organizations, the government or whatnot, right? Most people are not able to articulate that for themselves because the payoff isn't immediate. So I think people get stuck in the feelings of it and they stay in that space for way too long. And I'm not saying that that's like, that's a blanket answer to your question. There might be other things that they might be going through, this financial aspects. I get it. Yeah. There's finances involved, but there are ways to make it work. We know so many stories of people in dire circumstances and are standing in high positions of power and impact right now. And my thing is like, why can't it be that person who really, I'm not saying everyone who's in power is bad. What I'm trying to say is that there are so many people who can actually contribute as they are, being who they are, and they will resonate. Yeah. It's just that they're not willing to somewhere, like bite the bullet.
Right. Yeah. Right.
For whatever reason.
Let's talk about, can we talk about your program a little bit?
Oh, sure.
Like when people are going to join you in this program that you're creating, what is the bullet they get to bite? Like where are you pointing their attention and their energies as they work with you to produce a result? Like, is it speaking? Is it like, how do you help them?
So the tangible aspect would be speaking, but the bigger picture here is for everyone to look at their businesses differently. Your business is not just what you do online, because remember, coaching has a very, authorship or entrepreneurship has often, especially in the online space, got a very low barrier to entry. You need a Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah.
You need to be someone who can either articulate yourself, or I've heard people saying like, man, you give such good advice. Advice and strategy are not the same thing. Just not. And as a woman entrepreneur, I get advice all the time. All the time. And I'm just sitting there just nodding my head. All right, all
Right,
good. This is not my fight, right? Like I don't
Yeah.
step into the ring for that one.
Right.
And I just smile. I'm like, all right, God, give me grace. Let me just not internalize any of this and try to teach somebody who's not quite there yet for me to like even course correct.
Right.
So with the class itself, it's to help people look at their businesses differently. Why be in just one space? Because there's so many people out there who are looking for you. How do you really tap into the social equity you've built somewhere else? And
Yeah.
how do you port that over into bigger conversations? I work with government bodies because my heart work is working with the youth, with education reform, getting to them young. I don't want them to get into the cyclical pattern that some of us were stuck, right? So I want to go there. I was like, this is where I can start. So if I get an invitation to talk to sixth graders, I will take it. So people will be like, so hey, who within the school structure do you talk to? Be like, whoever you give me. And that's, in this case, not a bad answer, because I want to get to their minds a little earlier in the game, even if it's one thing they can latch on to.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Do you listen to shows like this and think, I could totally do that? You have a longing to connect more genuinely with your community and have a platform where you can play a bigger game. But you never start because either the tech's overwhelming or you don't want more work on your plate, or maybe you're not exactly sure what you would say. Yet you know you have really important things to share. This is why we created a done-for-you content marketing service, helping you give life to the conversations in your head to grow your business and your impact. Learn more at mygroundswell.com.
So for example, in your class, like everybody's going to come from a different set of skills, a different mission, a different heart. And so each of them, you would advise each of them differently based on what they bring to the table, what they have to work with, and where they want to go.
Yes, the foundation stays the same. How do you find certain local events? How do you find and create a presence that gets you invited to TEDx stages? Because most people have this dream, right? Like, oh, I'll someday do it.
Yep.
Again, the someday is like no day.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah. What's that? Yeah. So it's different currency for different people, but you learn the fundamentals, and then I teach you how to apply that to your own industry, and you take it to the next level. Yeah. And you research, you cold pitch certain places, and other places you can get invited with the way I teach you how to leverage your existing folks.
That's so cool. Do you feel like I'm just curious, like everybody who has important work, do you feel like that they are all thought leaders or should be thought leaders? Or
I think they need to be multifaceted first, right? In that they're curious about how the world works, how systems work. They have to have that base level of curiosity before they even go to becoming people who will stand and share their viewpoint. Because we have so many people right now, right, that are just famous for the sake of being famous, if you will, and are not doing as much as they could with that fame, right? So I think it's important to have the desire to help and the desire to grow within yourself first, and being extremely curious about the environment and the world we live in so that you can find a place you can contribute.
Yeah.
And you should always be open, right? Like I always say that, be open. Like, yes, like the youth audience will always remain close to my heart, however old, ancient I get, right? But I'm not close to the idea that something else could fall into place, that, oh gosh, I think I can give my time here. I can add value here. I can help shift a perspective here, right? I never go into any of my talks or sessions with an agenda, because I do practice healthy detachment from a spiritual perspective, right? Because my job is to show up for the person. If they're not latching on, there's only so much I can do. I don't believe in the hard sells, like, if it feels aligned, to say yes. I trust you to make that judgment, but I will ask questions that will be uncomfortable. So people have to, most of the people are prepared for that as well. Like, she's not gonna let me off easy. She is going to inquire more, right?
What was one of the biggest things for you? Like when you crossed over, what was one of the, maybe it was a life event or a piece of advice or wisdom or something revealed? Like what was, meaningful?
So I think for me, everything was leading up to it. If I went back 4 years ago, when I was extremely unhappy with my corporate life and that career that I was in, I used to have a red brick wall. It wasn't a brick wall, but it was a red wall that I would stare at, and my computer would be faced against the wall. And I would sit there and watch like videos and all the personal development stuff that would pop in my newsfeed, and I would just look at it, and you can't even articulate that someday you'll be in that space. I've watched countless TED talks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to stand on the red dot was, I'll do it someday kind of thing. But the way it happened within 7 months of me quitting corporate, which is crazy.
Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah. But how it happened again, right? Like, you're human. Someone reached out to me, asked me like, hey, will you come to my country? And I said, where do you live? Of course I would come, because I love traveling. I'm not going to tell a 20-year-old I won't.
Right.
And she tells me she's in Hong Kong. And the next thing I know, she's like, put me in touch with organizers at a TEDx event.
Wow.
And when I was unhappy and what I call nothing short of like devastation, and I've had many dark nights of the soul, by the way, also because I lived in New York City. So but my favorite city still, right? Because I feel like I grew there, I evolved there.
Yeah, right.
And so I think that for me it was just an ongoing process, but it took just a certain type of heartbreak for me to just stop, like melt. I was melting like in my heart and my spirit, and I knew that if I went in one more day into that job, I would die. And I remember talking to my dad, and that was the first thing I said to him. And the second thing I said to him was, and this is crazy because I can't believe like the words fell the way they did, but I said, there are people waiting for me. I need to meet some people in this lifetime who are waiting for my medicine, my work. And I have to find a way to act with courage here and just go. And knock on wood, for me, my family was very supportive. They could see how unhappy I was and how bitter I was getting. And a parent, it hurts a parent because they know their child, in a certain light, and they want to do everything they can to alleviate pain. I know you have kids, so you know that feeling. And I'm the strong one in the family, right? So me breaking down was just like, my dad was like, I'll get on the LIR right now. And I was like, don't have to come now, come over the weekend, we'll talk through it. And he asked me what my plan was. And I said, Dad, I just know this has to be done. The plan I have right now is that I'm going to write my first book, which I did. It's a book of poetry. I wrote that in Austin. And then I got on a flight, one-way ticket to India. And I'm yet to come back home. But I've been traveling like crazy in Asia because something or the other is just keeping me here. Wow. So it was everything kind of leading up to like the smallest thing, which I could have easily like completely withstood, if you will. But at that point, it was literally the last straw on the camel's sort of spiritual back. And that flipped it over, but the conversation was already going on internally. And I was seeing how people were living a life that had balance, in that they were doing work that made them smile, and they were doing it from anywhere in the world. And I wanted that. That was one of the biggest things for me, that I wanted to own my time so that I could write, I could travel, I could, meet new people and create some kind of awesomeness in the world. I didn't know what that would be. So even with the class, right, I'll have people ask me like, oh, so when is the next intake? And I'm like, there is no next intake. This is happening now.
It's this thing. This thing right here, right?
This is happening now. So again, with the sales, like, people are not funnel strategy. Neelam just is like this anti-marketing person who just doesn't want to conform. Now, I've always been like that though. Like, I've always been that person, and it's been tough, right? When and anyone I think you would have interviewed in the past will also tell you this, right? Or met on the path will tell you it's not easy, because you are the black sheep. People will try to understand you. People will try to put you in a bucket. Even your own family sometimes will be like, she does this thing, just check her Facebook, So you have to be able to live with that too, right? As part of that transition, you have to be able to understand that it is always going to be some form of transition. And it's not like this caterpillar to butterfly situation in an X amount of time. The butterfly will take some time to come through, but within the caterpillar moments, you will have butterfly situations too. But you kind of have to have the faith that that's coming eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely hear in your description, clues that that people are. So if you listening to this, right, are in those spaces where you're becoming bitter, you know, or you sense there's something else that you're meant for, and you're like, I have a work for somebody. My people are out there. Like, these are the things that through this show, I'm wanting to shake loose in the world, because I feel like there's a raising of consciousness. There's an awakening happening spiritually for people, where they're starting to see that they don't have to fit in the factory. They don't have to follow the rules and do it the way that we were brought up to do it. Right. So what I want is for people to hear this and be like, noticing the patterns and clues that are preempting your important work.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where you have to learn to feel all of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we talked about feeling. When I said like people stay too long with their feelings, this is the same thing. You got to start understanding and assessing what that means. If you're unhappy, I would cry, and I had a IKEA red couch, right? Like the $200 one. I'm sure if you saw it, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like these 4 steel legs. It was like very basic. Yeah, very basic. And now after I get off of this, I'm going to Google what it's called. Because it was like one of the basic ones that you would get out of university. And
I think I can see it in my head right now.
You can, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I had that, and I would cry on that stuff while I was biting into like something, you know, and I couldn't even eat some days. It was because I'm, you know, most people who are trying to do this work, right, are what I call high functioning depressives, or they have anxiety, or they feel too much, or they've been told you feel too much, you're too sensitive. I had people say, you're too sensitive. And you know, when you're in a world where people are conforming and are able to like numb that side of themselves down and go into work day in and day out with something that they don't connect with for whatever reason, you feel like you're not doing life right. And it's so strange. Like now I get messages from some of those people. Every now and then I'll get a message from an ex-boss, and I get that, by the way. There's someone who has recently messaged me on LinkedIn. I was like, wow, you're doing some cool stuff. This is so great, you know? But that was always in me. I was doing it in the space I was doing it. So a couple of things, right? Even if you don't know what that important work is right this second, but you know there's something you need to be doing, kind of start with what you've got. Start with helping somebody you know. Start with giving your time in a place where you know you can contribute. Start with that. People always ask me, so Neelam, how do I do this great big work? And I was like, the problem is you've just quantified the work. Why are you quantifying it? Look at what you hope to give. The rest will follow. Don't worry about like, oh, it has to be this like massive thing. No, like some of the people who you're seeing own companies and really shift mindsets and business structures right now are people who started like incrementally. And we're not a patient generation. We're a generation that has Prime. We have Prime, and we think Prime is too late. Like if it's 2 hours, like, oh my gosh, I have to wait 2 hours for this thing. Dude, like our grandparents used to walk like miles to get water or send a telegram. Let's be real.
I know, that is funny.
So like, you have to look at these little pieces as communication, right? If you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling like you don't fit in, these are places where you got to go dig deeper and deeper and do that work, whether it's stepping away from your immediate situation, if you can afford to, of course, step away from it, take a hiatus, take a short break, and like evaluate. Ask for help. Ask for help from people you think will listen. Ask for help from people you admire or are following and watching. You'll be surprised I've been surprised when people send me messages and I reply back to them. They're like, you're actually replying to me? I was like, why wouldn't I?
Right.
It's such a beautifully thought out message. Why would I not reply to you? I check my feed.
Give me a sense of, we can kind of wrap down here because this is good, but I want to know, like, if somebody is in that space, what are some of the things to look for? Like, what do they look for to know, like, okay, I'm on the right track and I need to go this direction?
So I would just say, think of everything as a building block, right? You have to be able to take the next right decision. What that means is, you know, if you're not feeling too great and you're not connecting with the work, you go home bitchy and you're taking it out on the wife, the kids and whatnot, or, you know, or you're just binging on pizza, whatever that is, right? Because emotions are usually outlet with some sort of addiction.
Right. Yeah.
And behavioral patterns are also addictive, right? So if you're not feeling whole, watch yourself, create that space where you can ask some of the deeper, meaningful questions, like, is this who I am? But when I was a kid, I wasn't like this.
Right.
Or someone tells you, like I had people tell me, even in my corporate gig, like, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here. You're not being valued here. I had those kind of messages come through too.
Wow.
So look for clues, and don't be scared. Like, don't be scared for what you find and how people perceive you, and obviously receive, right? Receive with grace. Like, if someone's telling you like you shouldn't be here, don't take it personally. Like, think of, oh my gosh, so there's something else I could do with my life. Like, what could that be? Yes. And you'll find once you sink into that awareness, I believe that the answers and the direction will come to you, but baby steps. Don't the real thing to watch out for here is, like, don't go to the end result like this. Like, don't go like, if it's not this, then it's nothing. Right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I knew I had to leave. I knew I had to leave my favorite city in the world. I had to pack my apartment up, sell what I could, move. I didn't know where I would land up. I just had some sort of an inkling that, listen, it will be okay.
Yeah.
Just follow this path, because right now the one you're on is not the right one for you.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. I heard, it was a couple of years ago now, I heard the analogy of, sometimes you can only go take the next step and you can't see around the corner. So you have to just go until you get far enough down that then you get new instruction, you get new direction. It's like, turn left here. And you're like, oh, look at this entire other thing over here I couldn't see before. You couldn't see it because if you had tried to see it from back here, you wouldn't have been able to see it. So I love that. Just take the next step.
Agreed. And that's important. And agreed. And that's so important, because that's where the idea to not get fixated. Exactly. And that's where the idea not to get fixated with what this thing is so critical, because that's where creativity lives. That's where divinity lives. That's where the feminine goddesses and goodness lives. Yeah. And that's the thing we don't know how to trust, because it's not finite.
Right. Yeah. It's beautiful. I love that. That's a great place to wrap. Neelam, if people want to connect with you about maybe, I don't know if you even have space left in your class, but if they want to connect with you somehow or learn from you or hire you, how do people reach you?
The best way is online. I'm accessible, social media, website. And yes, there are a couple of spaces left for this particular program. We're starting on February 22nd, 2019.
Wow.
And there's some amazing pre-work I'm going to be sending out to anyone who enrolls and is the right fit for this class. It's 7 weeks. And I'm going to take you to the process of how do you build your story of influence so that you can start, showing up differently in all your touch points, whatever they are. And how do you get in front of people who want to hire you for your expertise? How do you pitch to them? How do you talk about yourself? Because most people don't know how to take all the awesomeness they have, because they live in different places, just like you and me, right? Chris, we have different things we came with.
Right.
How do you bring that together, and how do you actually pitch so that you can start doing the real work? Like Perfect. The real work.
Yeah, the real work. Yeah, the real work. Absolutely. I think that's what our souls are hungry for. Absolutely.
Yes,
the real work. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for your time. It's great to just get to know you and the person that you are. The work that is a self-expression for you is really awesome to hear about. So thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
I will. Thank you.
Do you have important work in the world? We can help you produce a show just like this one and get your message out in the world. Go to mygroundswell.com to connect with us now.